Arizona wildfires, factors that challenge the front lines.
It's the accumulation of fuels from the absence of fire. When a fire does happen, we get a big one.
A tale of two cities, how local governments are handling face coverings.
I think mandating wearing a mask is not going to guarantee you that everybody's going to wear one.
And I said I didn't want to go with citations, I wanted to go with education.
Reaction to the Supreme Court's latest rulings, advocacy groups prepare for the next steps.
Well, it says that our nation it's a shifting.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us. Before we get to our featured discussions, we want to acknowledge a developing story in Tucson that involves the death of a man in police custody. It comes at a time when policing techniques nationwide are under heightened scrutiny. Tucson police recently revealed details about the death of 27-year-old Carlos Ingram Lopez on April 21st. They also shared redacted body camera footage. All three officers involved resigned before an administrative investigation was complete. But Chief Chris Magnus said they would have been fired for multiple policy violations. And he offered to resign himself, in part because of how long it took for the mayor and public to learn about the incident. Since the story broke, it has rapidly evolved. You can follow the latest updates on azpm.org. In the coming weeks, we intend to have deeper conversations about issues related to transparency in law enforcement and police reform here on Arizona 360. Now on to another developing situation. Arizona's wildfire season is off to an active start. Most notably, southern Arizona's Bighorn Fire continues to spread across the Santa Catalina mountain range. Lightning ignited the fire June 5th, burning tens of thousands of acres and forcing evacuations in the weeks since. University of Arizona professor and fire ecology expert Don Falk told us the combination of weather and natural fuels creates a perfect storm for crews on the front lines. Now, for many of us here in the Tucson area, we remember about 20 years ago or so where the Catalina suffered a devastating fire. Is that about the right time frame for it to happen again?
Historically, they were low severity surface fires with low flame lengths and not really tree-killing fires the way we're seeing now. But because of the changes in climate over the last 100 years, as well as the accumulation of fuels from the absence of fire, when a fire does happen, we get a big one. And you're absolutely right. Those fires in 2002 and 3, anybody who's driven up the Mount Lemmon Road since then, a lot of what you're seeing is the legacy of those fires with forest converted into shrubland.
How firefighters fight fires has also evolved over the years. The prescribed burns, control burns, all those things can be positive and negative, and they're quite controversial. From what you've studied, what is the role or the reason for some of those tactics?
Right. So the basic principle in fighting fire is what's called the fire triangle, the things you need in order for a fire to actually initiate and spread. You need some kind of ignition, lightning, or a match. You need oxygen, and you need fuel. And basically, all firefighting revolves around trying to deprive a burning fire of one of those three elements. And most often, what they're dealing with is fuel. They're trying to manage fuels. They cut a fire break so that the fire comes up to an area where there's simply not enough fuel for it to burn. The fire will drop down to the ground, and then they can extinguish it. But the things you do before a fire, like thinning or prescribed burning, likewise are meant to reduce the mass, that is the total amount of energy basically stored on the landscape. And it's worth saying that the Forest Service and the Park Service and all of our public agencies, they would love to be doing more thinning and more prescribed burning, really get the fuel problem under control. And we know they want to do that, but they've been so short of resources that they keep falling behind where they would really like to be.
A lot of the excitement during wildfire season is always during the fire. And then the media, we tend to lose interest once the fire is out. What tends to happen right after the fire is out?
This is such an interesting question, Lorraine. And this is where people like me enter the picture. When the fire goes out, the TV cameras go home, the firefighters go home, and you have what looks like kind of a smoky mess. But it's actually an ecosystem that is now starting a healing process. A lot of plants have been killed, the soils have been damaged. When water falls onto a hillside like that, instead of soaking into the ground and entering that hydrologic cycle, you can get massive runoff, sheet runoff, and erosion. So all the sediment and all the water ends up down in the stream channels. And it can take a long time for an ecosystem like that to put itself back together. And when I say a long time, we can't think in terms of our own lifetimes. Some ecosystems, like grasslands, come back from fire really quickly, like 6 to 12 months. They're back. They're ready to go. In fact, they're healthier than they were before the fire. But an old growth forest, such as we have on top of the Catalinas, where the trees are 200 to 500 years old, that's not going to stand itself back up in a year or two. That's going to take decades and possibly even longer, because if the climate is not suitable for the forest regrowing, and in particular for seedlings to turn into to trees again, then that system could take a very long time to heal.
The runoff that you're describing has been devastating to mountain ranges like the Chiricahuas, for example. What's the prognosis for the homes that are on the lower level there of the Catalinas?
What I can say at this point is we don't know what those possibilities are from this fire. Remember that here in the Southwest, our major fire season is right now, it's June. And what's going to happen next month, our heaviest, most torrential rains during the monsoon. It just happens that one happens right after the other. So this is where a lot of the agencies come in with what's called Burned Area Emergency Rehabilitation, or BAER. And they get out there as quickly as they can after the fire and try to put some structures in place that will slow down that erosion. And the Forest Service is setting up to do this right now, even though the forest is still engaged in fighting the fire. They're already moving into that post-fire rehab to try to prevent these big erosion episodes.
With nearly 3,600 COVID-19 cases reported in a single day, Arizona set a new daily record this week. Meanwhile, to slow the spread, more municipalities adopted their own mask ordinances. In a moment, we'll hear from two mayors about their different takes on requiring masks. But first, this week, President Trump visited Arizona for the third time in 6 months. President Trump's first stop brought him to Yuma County Tuesday, where he toured a section of new border wall and touted the more than 200 miles of fencing built so far.
Solid steel, it's rebar and concrete inside the steel.
By that afternoon, he rallied about 3,000 supporters at a megachurch in Phoenix, some of whom defied the city's ordinance and showed up without a mask. The president addressed the uptick in cases, attributing it entirely to increased testing.
27.5 million tests. Now, when you have all those tests, you have more cases. So the news conference said, they have more cases. Well, yeah.
Arizona's rise in cases has come as the state increases testing, but so has the rate of positive tests, as well as hospital bed and ventilator usage. This week, Pima County officials warned ICUs were nearing capacity. The county passed its own mask requirements, but in the town of Marana, Mayor Ed Honey says he has no plans to enforce the policy. We asked him about that decision. As the mayor of Marana, you could issue some sort of proclamation that would require wearing a face covering in public, and you've opted not to do that.
I have, yes.
And what's the reason behind that decision?
Well, I think if people have a certain amount of culpability on their own, if you go to a public place, wear a mask. If you're in an area where you can separate, or in a park, or children playing in our splash pads or on our playground equipment, they're not going to wear a mask. It's 106 degrees out there. I think mandating wearing a mask is not going to guarantee you that everybody's going to wear one. I think asking people to try to be on their best behavior and be cautious and careful of the health of others works better.
Pima County, in the most recent days, has decided that the proclamation exists. Marana is in Pima County. How do you see that manifesting itself here over the next few weeks?
I don't have an issue with the mask part. I have an issue with the penalty part, and I'll give you two examples quickly. There's a penalty that if a restaurant lounge has 3 or 4 calls in from patrons that either people aren't wearing a mask, or too many people gathered at a table, or something of that nature, the county could call the state liquor department and ask them to look at that business. Another thing was they originally encouraged people, if you see someone you think that is not fulfilling the order, take a picture and send it to the county website. They have since kind of changed that a little bit to call the website. My problem was if Tom and Jane are in a business with their children and they're not wearing a mask, and you take a picture of them, I don't want a picture of Tom and Jane or their children on a county website. And my biggest problem with the county is I don't like people playing big brother to the town of Marana.
What do you see as your role should Pima County Health Department or someone call Marana Police Department and say, you need to get down to X establishment because people there are not wearing masks?
We will not enforce that. And I'll give you a couple reasons. I've talked to our legal staff and police as well. The resolution was issued by the county, not by the town of Marana. And we did not sign on with an agreement with the county to be the policing agency for that resolution. So the town of Marana will not enforce the resolution. That doesn't mean the county cannot come into our community and do it.
Any concern about the economics of this, that people in the surrounding area may say, I'm not going to go to Marana to shop anymore because they're not enforcing it the way I'd like them to?
We're actually seeing just the opposite. Our stores are just being overrun with people. And I'm having people call saying, I live in East Tucson, I'm coming to Marana to shop. I don't think that becomes an issue. I will talk about the economic a little bit. The national news yesterday said 8.5% of all people that have a mortgage in this country are either now in default or behind on their mortgage and close to default. I think that's a really big issue. And most of those are young people with families. I need those young people to be able to go back to work. That doesn't mean you don't do it respectfully. Wear a mask if you can. Don't congregate. But what are we going to do if that 8.5% of the people lose their home? Where are they going to live? Where are their children going to live? What are they going to do? So the virus is an issue, but the consequences of the virus are an issue as well.
Okay. Ed Honey, Mayor of Marana, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
At the Arizona-Mexico border, a surge in COVID-19 cases led the city of Nogales to require face coverings in public. Mayor Arturo Garino tells us spikes occurred around holidays and graduations last month, leading him to believe people gathering in large groups failed to wear masks or maintain social distancing. While breaking its ordinance is considered a misdemeanor, Garino says it's unlikely a person would be cited.
What I did is I spoke to the police chief and the deputy city manager, and I said I didn't want to go with citations. I wanted to go with education first. And even, matter of fact, our police officers carry masks with them in case they find somebody that is in need of a mask and that cannot social distance. They'll give that person a mask. And for what I understand, on Sunday, the deputy city manager and some other people went out to businesses and said that 99.9% of the people were wearing masks going into the establishments.
And help us understand what the situation is like with COVID-19 in Santa Cruz County, because you have had a spike in numbers and also a number of deaths.
We never expected this. Matter of fact, when all this started, I remember sitting down with John Kissinger, who was the deputy city manager, and we were concerned about having our first case. And then we say, well, you know, I guess there's no problem because some of these cases are probably travel related. Somebody went somewhere and caught it somewhere else. And then all of a sudden, all this turned into community spread, and then it just spiked. And then at that moment, then it was something to worry about. And these people that have passed away, we all know, they're friends, and everybody probably in Nogales, for the size of community, probably knows somebody that's being hospitalized right now.
This week, we heard Governor Ducey talk about our proximity to the border and how he's in close communication with his partner south of the border. Any indication at this point that the spread is occurring because of the cases that are seen in Mexico?
Probably, yes, because there's got to be some cross travel. A lot of our residents, and not only from here, but from Tucson and up north, have traveled through here to go to Guaymas and San Carlos, especially during the Memorial Day weekend. You have to understand, Nogales, Arizona has 22,000 people. They have close to 500,000 people, and supposedly we have more cases than they do. So for me, it's hard to believe. So there's got to be something there too.
It may be too early to speak about this, but what do you see as the future in Nogales' ability to recover from all this?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard right now. What we're looking at is the opportunity to be able to open up completely. Just so you know, the downtown area in Morley, I think there's only 2 stores open on the whole block. What happened is after they started were allowed to open, they don't want to open. They don't feel comfortable to open. Matter of fact, 2 or 3 stores that opened up after the opening on the 15th uh, reclosed their stores because there weren't enough customers, and plus they weren't comfortable with the COVID because of the employees not being comfortable with people going in there, and some people not following the guidelines of the CDC wearing a mask. So all of that basically brought me to making the decision and bringing it in as a proclamation and also writing the letter to the governor, giving us the opportunity for us to, do this as a city.
Arturo Garino, the mayor of Nogales, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Federal unemployment benefits will begin to phase out in the coming weeks. This while the unemployment rate in Arizona is nearing 13%. One of the industry's hardest hit, restaurants. We learn more from Steve Chukri. He leads the Arizona Restaurant Association and also serves as a Maricopa County supervisor.
What we have seen in the restaurant industry, first and foremost, this couldn't have come at a worse time when it first hit, in that it was our busiest time of year, spring training, all the events that happen here. And as a response and as a lasting effect, what we saw is Arizona restaurants losing roughly $29 million a day during the peak of this virus. The month of April, we lost $815 million. And keep in mind, annually, we're almost a $14 billion industry just right here in Arizona. And we employ over 230,000 people in the state. So this has been a tough one. It's been a tough one, but you know what? The innovation and the entrepreneurial style of our restaurateurs are still here, and we're navigating through it.
Steve, one report says that more than 80% of restaurant workers have been furloughed or lost their jobs. How do they recover from something like that?
Well, Lorraine, first and foremost, that number is right on the money. It's right on the bullseye. That's exactly what we've seen, between 75 and 80%. In that number I just gave you of about 230,000 employees stretched across Arizona, you can do the math and see just how detrimental that's been to our workforce. Going into COVID-19, on an average day, our payroll in Arizona restaurants was $14 million a day. We now estimate that to be down to $2.5 million per day being spent. So it's been a whopper of an impact on our employee base.
Some of the government and private sector supports that have been in place are due to come to a close here July 31st. What becomes of the restaurant industry given that so many people were utilizing unemployment benefits?
While we were concerned because we were hearing murmurs across many different business types, many business industries saying that employees weren't wanting to come back to work, we were somewhat dumbfounded. But then the truth really was coming to fruition, unfortunately, when we started calling people back into our restaurants, into our kitchens, back in May when the stay-at-home policy was lifted by Governor Ducey. And we saw that. We saw some folks saying, you know what, we simply want to stay home. We were making more money. And our response was twofold. First and foremost, be careful what you wish for, because you may not have your job here, your position here, maybe be filled by someone else who's willing to come back to work. And secondly, it was a call to the governor's office and the leadership in the state to say, hey, if someone's called back to work, and they refuse to do so, they should still receive unemployment benefits because they do have their job back. So one was taxpayer minded, and the other was just the pure risk of losing a job you might have really enjoyed at one time just because you want to be on unemployment for a couple more months.
There's been quite a bit of discussion about the state government's role and then local government. Can local governments like the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, for example, do anything differently that could help offset some of what we're seeing now?
Public health for counties, Lorraine, is really first and foremost one of the functions we do, more so than anything else. And so we believe we had a responsibility to suggest to the public in the strongest terms possible, please, please, please wear a mask. However, many people are doing the personally responsible thing and wearing a mask. It's been proven to shield against COVID-19, and that's what we need at this time. It's not going to be forever, but that's certainly what we need right now.
Okay, Steve Chukri, a Maricopa County Supervisor and the President of the Arizona Restaurant Association. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you.
Recent U.S. Supreme Court rulings that upheld DACA and expanded the 1964 Civil Rights Act to protect LGBT employees stunned many who expected the court's conservative majority to decide in unison against both. As that reaction subsides, Tony Paniagua heard from Arizonans directly impacted about what the rulings mean for their futures.
Reina Montoya was only 13 years old when she was brought to the United States illegally by her parents. But despite her undocumented status, Montoya has thrived in this nation since moving to Mesa, Arizona. After graduating from high school with honors, she earned 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree, and taught at a high school for 2 years.
And I started meeting a lot of my students that had very similar challenges that I did, that had to deal with their mental health issues regarding immigration, uncertainty, and anxiety. So I took a leap of faith, and that's when I decided to found Aliento, and I've been the CEO and founder at Aliento for the past 4 years.
Perder todo lo que has construido, ser separado de tus seres queridos.
Aliento works with other so-called dreamers in this country. Like Montoya, they arrived here as children and grew up undocumented but call this nation home. In 2012, by executive action, President Obama created a program called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It allows the dreamers who apply and qualify to stay in the United States without the fear of deportation, permitting them to go to school and find employment. President Trump wanted to do away with DACA, but the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the program can remain, at least for now.
I remember when I was reading exactly from the Supreme Court block, like my hands started trembling and they started sweating. My heart was racing really fast. So I couldn't really believe what had happened because if I'm very candid, I didn't think that it was going to be a positive reaction for DACA recipients.
But it is bittersweet, she says. Justices say the current administration was, quote, arbitrary and capricious in the way it tried to undo DACA, but points out that the president does have the authority to rescind the program. Trump has vowed to try it again, and if the administration follows the proper channels next time, it could be successful. That's disconcerting for Montoya and thousands of other younger dreamers.
There's 7,000 here in the state of Arizona that could have qualified for DACA specifically, and they met all the criteria, but they were too young to apply. Back in September 2017, when President Trump ended the program. So that is one of the things that prevented them to apply.
17-year-old Phoenix resident Darian Benitez Sanchez is in that group. He had hoped to apply soon, but now his prospects are up in the air.
But it has been a long stretch since 2007 to now. We're stuck in this in-between of fear and hope all the time. I'm a senior now, and applying for college is going to be difficult. Getting some sort of, here in Arizona, in-state tuition for like a school such as ASU, or it's not possible. So it forces me to look outward, leave my family.
And the future remains uncertain. Dreamers say U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the federal agency which is supposed to provide guidelines for DACA, is not helping. Here is part of a statement from USCIS after the Supreme Court ruling. Quote, DACA was created through an executive branch memorandum after President Obama said repeatedly that it was illegal for him to do so unilaterally. The constitutionality of this de facto amnesty program created by the Obama administration has been widely questioned since its inception. Ultimately, DACA is not a long-term solution for anyone, and if Congress wants to provide a permanent solution for these illegal aliens, it needs to step in to reform our immigration laws.
We've been calling lawyers to make sure we have any documentation ready. We're in this limbo. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen, but we want to make sure we're prepared.
I have personally spoken to 6 different attorneys, and out of all of that, it's very diverse, the opinion that they give.
In another unrelated case, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does apply to gay, lesbian, and transgender employees in most cases. That means they are protected from being fired due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Equal Rights Arizona and Southern Arizona Senior Pride work on behalf of this community.
This is an incredible victory because, well, it says that our nation it's a shifting. I feel like it's more important than marriage equality. Marriage equality, we have said you can get married on a Friday and get fired on a Monday. So that is one thing that changes with the Supreme Court ruling.
It really is a monumental win for our community, but as always, we need to remain vigilant.
Like Dreamers and their supporters, both groups say there was immediate cause for celebration when the Supreme Court ruled in their favor, but more work, they explain, is necessary.
The Equality Act was not passed, and we don't know yet if this Supreme Court ruling will be inclusive of housing, the military, medical care.
My hope is that as we continue to grow as a society, that it won't be only the laws that will change, but it will be the way that human beings interact with one another and seek to understand one another. Because that's really where discrimination takes place, is in human hearts. And so hopefully that change of heart will follow the change of law.
That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. Before we go, a programming note. Arizona 360 will not broadcast next week due to the holiday. We'll be back, though, the following week. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media or send an email to arizona360@azpm.org.